Hey everybody, it is Saturday, November 21st, and it is time for my sketchbook review. Nothing really to announce this week. I've just been doing a ton of paperwork. I'm trying to get it all done before late December, and I'm starting my NCLEX reviews and things like that, so I've been a little bit busy and a little bit distracted, but I've also been a little bit art blocked, so a lot of this week's stuff is Harp and Stars fan art. I was up chatting late and doodling late, and that's just kind of the way it is. So you guys understand, I'm sure. Plus, as long as I'm drawing, I'm pretty happy. So I'm just not going to worry anymore about the content. And I'm just going to worry about the actual drawing. So yeah, and yeah, that's about it. That's all I gotta say. All right, anyway, so let's get into this. We left off last week with Boof and Peep, the Creepy Chibi babies. And let's see, the first thing I did is I wanted to keep on the couples roll, and I had sketched this out, but I wasn't happy with it because they're not facing the viewer, which, you know, is actually personally, like, I like the pose. I enjoy it. I enjoy when characters aren't necessarily looking at the viewer, because then it doesn't feel so much like a picture. But at the same time, it's like, it doesn't really appeal to people to see things like that. For some reason or another, people like to have eye contact with their characters, blah, 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 blah. But it turned out to be a very nice and intimate looking pose, and I think I'm going to come back and work on it a little bit later. I just kind of moved on from it because I realized, like, partway through, I was like, oh, they're not looking, and that's not going to be as fun, so I moved on. But I do actually like the pose. I think it's very intimate and very, very pretty and affectionate. I love it. And then I started doodling. I believe I doodled this in class because my teacher was talking about something from last week that I already understood. I was like, why are we going over this again? What? So I was doodling, and this is Marquand from Harp and Stars, and obviously this is Piper. And he looks a bit older in this picture. Now, he does age through the game. Like, there's no secret. The game spans over not several, but a few years. So he starts off as a baby, and he ends up getting bigger as the game progresses. So I was just kind of like, I want to draw. So I did. And Piper really, really enjoys children, babies and younger kids. So I drew them together because they're cute. And I imagine that she's just going to latch onto him and try to be like a big sister to him or something like that at some point. I'm not exactly sure when, but I don't know. In a perfect world. But yeah, she does enjoy kids, and there's lots of kids in the world, so she keeps herself busy with spoiling them rotten. Yeah. And then I went back to some more Boof and Peep, but this, I don't know, this pose, I based it off of something that it just didn't turn out. So I kind of scrapped it, but it's supposed to be Boof and Peep, and he's supposed to be kind of picking her up a little bit, and I just kind of quit on it. I was like looking at it, I'm like, this is not conveying what I wanted it to convey, and I was like, rather than just erase it, I'm just gonna move on. And so I did, and I started working on Winter Piper, because I kind of want her to have a winter design of some kind. Now, she wears like the big poofy dresses and everything like that, but I was trying really to design some sort of a shawl or a cloak or something. I mean, typically, I believe back in the day, poor people would just take blankets and stuff like that and walk around with those held against them to keep them warm. But the girl can sew, so I figured that at some point she could probably sew something together for herself to where she can at least have access of her hands, or have both of her hands free. But she's actually making a snowball in this picture. It just doesn't really convey because there's no drawn snow, and she's kind of packing it. I don't know. I was just having fun because we actually are getting our first snowfall right now of the year. Actually, look at, I don't know if you guys can even see it, but it'll focus. It is snowing out there. They're calling for like 6 to 10 inches. And of course, we have to go somewhere today. We have to go to the vet here actually in about half an hour, 45 minutes to take my cat back again. And then we have a dinner that we're supposed to attend later on tonight around 7. And the mass accumulation is supposed to start around 4 p.m. So it's going to be interesting getting down there and getting back up. But I'm sure that they knew it was coming, so I'm sure they'll have the expressways cleared up. So, yeah, whatever. Anyway, enough about the weather. Another Piper. This one actually turned out like way cuter than I hoped it would. I don't know whose jacket she's wearing. She's just wearing somebody's jacket. a men's jacket, obviously, and she's just kind of smiling, and I like her. And this right here, oh my god, ignore that. That's my attempt at Tristan, and it just, ugh. I don't know what I was thinking. I think I was half asleep when I was drawing it, so just ignore that. That's terrible. This is adorable. This is terrible. Ugh, ugh, ugh. And then I was working on some duck stuff with version 1.0 of Piper or whatever, and I'm trying to, pardon my scratching my arm there, trying to develop a character to go along with her, so that way it's not just Piper running around being silly. And this guy doesn't really have a name or anything like that, but I imagine that they're both thieves, and they tend to go after the same thing, and like they get in each other's way a lot, and that's how they're gonna hopefully be introduced. But like, they have a relatively decent history of getting in each other's way when the story starts. So, because I mean, development's fine and everything, it's just personally I don't want to have a story about development. I want to have a story where they're coming in with an already established relationship, if I actually go through with this. I have so many ideas right now, it's not even funny. It's very distracting too, but yeah, she's just basically saying she wants the diamond, and he's like saying, let go, I got it first. And he's gonna get away with it too, because he does. Another quick Piper here, Mouse Piper, and she's drinking a warm cup of whatever, and yeah. I just wanted to draw her sitting and drinking something. And then there's this duck guy again without his costume on. And I imagine that he's like some sort of an engineer of some kind. I don't know if it's going to be weapons or software, but I think it's going to be software engineering. Yeah. So yeah. There's him. I'm just kind of trying to get the design down and get a feel for the character. I want him to be like kind of very super cocky and sure of himself, which is actually a theme in a lot of my male characters, but whatever. And then this kind of developed overnight is, again, we've got I finally named them. I've got Faye, who's the white hair girl, and then Leal, who's he's going to be like a towhead blonde. I finally got around to developing something for them based on folklore, fairy folklore. Basically, what I've kind of decided is the direction I want to go with these two is that they're in some sort of a preset contract between their families. He's from a fairy family, she's from just a regular human family, but she's got fairy blood in her, because I was reading somewhere about how it was believed, especially in like Irish folklore, that babies and young children and women would be captured by fairies for a few reasons, and one of the main ones was that they needed human blood within their bloodlines in order to keep their magic going or something like that, which makes sense, I guess, because diluting, it's the same as like inbreeding, is like if you inbreed too much or if you interbreed too much with the same DNA, then eventually you're going to start getting genetic mutations and things like that. So you have to go outside the sources. But where was I going with that? Oh, I don't know, but I imagine like in this story that I've got going in my head that I've not written a single thing down for, is like his bloodline is one of the only ones that's left, because as humans have encroached and destroyed fairy lands and things like that. I mean, granted, they're in another dimension, but you get what I mean. Is that they're having a harder and harder time getting humans to willingly come over and blah, 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 blah. It's like this big thing. But her family in particular is under contract with his family. And he's like some 32nd removed cousin, not removed cousin, but 32nd cousin to like the actual heir. So he'll never actually like be a ruler. Because like I was reading about high courts and low courts and peasants or whatever. It's called something different. It's like rustics and whatever. But he really doesn't have a chance. But he is good for bringing in new baby blood, if you will. Not like blood. You guys got what I mean. It's like it's new DNA, not new blood. So I just use blood because a lot of people tend to correlate blood and DNA together. Anyway, back to my point. But she's a little bit unaware, because I think in the story what I've decided is like her grandmother was the last one to actually partake in the contract. And she was like gone for what they assumed was 2 days, but it was actually in her timeline, because, you know, fairies can manipulate time. It was like several years, and she had 4 children, and the stipulation of the contract is they can have as many kids as they want, but one child has to be able to come back with the mother because it's only fair, and they're supposed to do a trade of everything fairy related has to be equal in trade. So one child to bring back, and not really bring back but be pregnant with, I guess, because she was married at the time, for, you know, another thing. But there's also fairy blessings and stuff like that which have weight. So yeah, so it's this big long thing. But her mother didn't, because her mother actually came back, and when she was born actually had what they kind of call as fairy sight. Like they say if you rub your eye with shamrock oil or something like that, you can see fairies. She was naturally born with it, so they all assumed she was mentally ill, when actually she was seeing exactly what she was supposed to be seeing, because she could see normally, but she could also see all these weird things. So she's kind of mentally ill, and she self-medicated with alcohol and things like that. So she's not mentally stable enough to be partaking in this contract. So her daughter, who is actually only a quarter fairy-blooded, and has actually, the more dilute the DNA, the more potent the magical ability. So she's just kind of weird, and she actually has physical characteristics of fairies, like in her facial features, her hair color, her structure, and she does have magical abilities, but to her it's just weird stuff that happens around her, and she can't really control it because she's never been taught. Whereas her mother, who is a half fairy, she has fairy sight, but that's it. She doesn't look like she's a fairy. She doesn't have any other abilities but that. And then her grandmother, who is actually just who is also half fairy, has no abilities, but it comes out the more dilute it is. So either if you're pure or very dilute, quarter to less, you actually have, in my world, have more power. And then he's like just there because it's his duty, so he's gonna be interesting to write. But she's like has no clue about any of this because obviously her mother didn't tell her, so she's learning all of this from grandma, like so many years down the road, when grandma just kind of pops in and says, hey, so we have this mystical contract that you have to fulfill because your mother cannot. And then I was going back to Leo's true form, because he looks human here. This is his human form. He'll have the short blonde hair and look relatively human. Good looking human, but still relatively human. And in his other form, he'll have the pointy elf ears. His hair is incredibly long, incredibly thick, and incredibly blonde. And I'm going to give him these little under the eye, I forget what they're called. They're like, I don't know, cats have them, they're ticks. But it's supposed to be like a dark reflection, so that way light absorbs around your eyes a little bit better. But since he's not like a dark fairy or anything like that, so it kind of gives him this weird sort of evil look. But he's not, actually. He's just very indifferent and very neutral, I guess is the word. And again, when reading folklore, a lot of the fairy folk tend to be incredibly neutral. They don't emotionally get invested unless they're emotionally getting invested for a reason. So unless they're getting something out of it, and to him, he's not really getting anything out of this other than, you know, he gets to maintain the contract, which is honorable in and of itself, but it's not like it's going to help him become a ruler or anything. His, like, you know, uncle of like so many people away is the one who's kind of forcing him into this, because he is the king. But yeah, designing him was fun because I already kind of knew what I wanted him to look like, and then changing him up a little bit. I don't know if she'll ever see him like that. This is how her mother will see him though, because even with the glamour on to look human, he still looks like this to her because she has the ability to see it. And I was kind of doing some stuff where he's like kissing her hand and stuff like that, because he has to be polite, he has to charm her, he has to basically win her over, because they can't just impregnate. It has to be a willing pregnancy. And so, you know, if she's not willing, it's just not going to happen. So he has to kind of coax her into it. And over time, as the relationship develops, I'm sure that we'll figure something out. I don't want it to be like she's like head over heels in love with him, like immediately, and he's in love with her. I don't think he'll ever be in love with her, but I think that they'll come to an understanding or an agreement. Because contractually speaking, she'll have to go back to the human world once she leaves anyway. Because she can't stay in the fairy world. I mean, she could, but she won't. She'll eventually come back. So I don't see them as being like a forever living happily ever after sort of couple. But they do come together for a purpose, which is just to me as important as couples staying together forever. And then I did like a ton of homework, and then I got really, really tired of doing homework, so I went back to sketching, and of course I went right back into Harp and Stars. But I was listening to the Phantom of the Opera soundtrack, and I believe it's I can't think of this song right this second. Let me look it up real quick, because I have the soundtrack still on my phone, because I am a dork like that, and I listen to it obsessively. Shut up, YouTube. The Point of No Return is the song. Oh, it's right there. What am I doing? I was thinking about it. I was like, Piper was a nun, and but she never like played instruments or anything. Actually, piano was considered back then very non-ladylike for women to play, actually any instrument, but a lot of them did, so it's really weird. But she could sing, because nuns were expected to sing hymns and to lead the choir, so she can sing, and she could sing really good, because it was like the only thing she had to express herself was singing. So she does, and she does it very well. And now that she's being, you know, introduced to all of this fine literature, the plays and everything of the time, Phantom of the Opera, Les Miserables, things like that were around back then. So she kind of gets really obsessed with Phantom of the Opera, because while it's dark, it's still a dark romance, and she just, oof. I like it, so she's gonna like it. That's just the way it is. So she's belting it out there. She's very passionate when she sings too. I love her. And then she can't really tell if she's in key sometimes. This is just a weird thing, but because she's used to tuning herself with a piano, but she doesn't play, so she's just assuming she's on key, and for the most part, she usually is. She would need a nudge. I mean, when you've only sang hymns for your entire life, I mean, you only know the tunes and tones for that. So coming into something else is a little bit more difficult, especially when it's a completely different musical genre. But yeah, this turned out really well. I actually put this up on my Instagram and Tumblr. And then this is Piper and Lasser visiting in jail, because eventually one or the other is going to go to jail, and they're going to have to visit each other. This was Faye. I was working on her kind of exploding in anger. Changed up the character design a little bit, the way I was drawing it, but I'm going to experiment a little bit more. It doesn't quite look like her. I mean, she's missing a birthmark, which could potentially be the reason why, but yeah. And yeah, when she gets angry, her powers would tend to come out then, but other than that, they're pretty docile. And because I was listening to Phantom of the Opera, and I was thinking about it, I was like, oh, I need to watch Les Miserables. So like midnight, I decided to put it in. It's like a 3-hour long movie, so I was up until like 4 o'clock in the morning watching Les Miserables. And I was thinking about Lawrence from Harp and Stars, who's like this really staunch, very devoted police officer. And I was like, oh my god, he's like Javert. And I don't know if that's a correct assumption, but it was very, very similar. And I was just thinking about how Piper, like, she'd read that, and then she'd start thinking about the people she knew. She'd flat out be like, you remind me of Javert. And he'd be like, Javert? I'm sure he knows exactly who it is because of who his mother is, and I'm sure she's made him read Les Miserables. So I don't know. I just thought it was a funny correlation that it clicked. And then I was like, I don't know if that was an intentional thing or not. But it's okay. So I kind of doodled it out. And then I got a picture here of Lasser making Piper eat all the foods. He was supposed to be like sneaking in a snack or something. Like, it's snack time. And she's like annoyed because he feeds her so much. And she's tiny for a reason. Because nuns traditionally live minimalistically. They don't eat a ton of food, and they tend to actually give away a lot. Like in this story they did. I'm not saying that all nuns are like that, and I'm not saying that that's how they should be. I'm just saying that in this instance, her convent was very minimalistic towards the nuns, even though they did most of the work. So the belief is that women don't need as much to eat as the men, blah, 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 blah. And they did give a lot away to the homeless people who came knocking at the church door. So she just kind of adapted to not eating as much as the average bear. She's still relatively healthy, but she is severely malnutritioned and blah, blah, blah. I put way too much medical stuff into my characters because, honestly, it just kind of helps me to study when I do. So, whatever, but yeah. She's very, like, in this this one, I'm having a hard time seeing because of the stupid glare from the light, but she's like, oh, don't you think that there's a lot of food here? And he's like, yeah, it's just a small light lunch. It's cute. But that's all I got around the drawing this week because I have had a lot of homework and a lot of stuff to do. So hopefully once I get this weekend over, once we finish our dinner and I get my paperwork done for my clinical class, I'll be able to focus more on other stuff. I still have my 10-page paper to write, but that's due December 7th, so I just kind of got to sit down and write it. I've got all the information, I just haven't put it all together yet, and I still kind of want to get a second look at it, but I'm not 100% sure. Like, I'm checking out. I've got senioritis so bad, it's not even funny. So I just need to get through this care plan and this 8-page assessment, which I started last night. I should have been working on it like the night before, and I tried to. I just could not focus. My cat being sick is not helping either, but you know, the whole thing is just kind of turning into a mess, and I need to get it back under control before I screw up in my last semester. So hopefully tonight I could get my 8-page done and start my care plan. My clinical focus I'm not as worried about, but we'll see. But yeah, that's it for this week. If you guys liked what you saw, feel free to like and subscribe. I want to welcome all the new viewers. I've actually had quite a few subscriptions just in this past week, and I just want to say thank you everybody for subscribing and checking out my channel. I really, really appreciate it. I mean, I just do these sketchbook reviews because it's something easy. I mean, I do like art stuff. It's just I can't when I'm in school because it takes too much time in school right now. It's just way too important. I mean, my art's important too. That's why I'm continuing to do these. But to set up and do speed paints and things like that, it's a lot of work. And until I have a little bit more free time, I have to get some of these big projects out of the way before I can start dedicating the time. Because I don't want to just throw stuff up to throw stuff up. I want to throw stuff up that's good in quality. My sketchbook reviews are a little bit less formal just because it's me talking about things I've been sketching and the ideas I have behind them. So I don't feel so bad about these being a little bit less in quality, but when it comes to my speed paints, I really want to do better quality videos when it comes to that stuff. So it's coming in the future. Like I said, with school, the holidays, everything going on, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to, but I definitely plan to, starting in January, doing at least a couple speed paints a month. I'm going to need to because I'll be studying for my NCLEX and getting ready to do that and looking for a job, but you know, in between looking for jobs and sitting around waiting for phone calls, I definitely will need something to take the stress off. So there's that to look forward to. But again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next sketchbook review.